Hello everyone. How are you all? I welcome you all to my channel Social Science with Shilpa. So in today's class, we will talk about chapter 3 of grade 7, that is our changing earth. So let's begin. Let us find out how the earth has changed over a period of time. Do you think our planet earth was same since its birth? What do you say? No, not at all. So let us find out the mysteries behind it. What are theories that are working to bring the Earth to its present position? So before around what we can say around 250 million years ago, our Earth looked like this. Is it the same Earth where we live? No, 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 no. We live on this Earth. So are these two Earths the same? Yes, they are. But around 250 million years ago, it was a supercontinent known as Pangaea. So this Pangaea was the same continent which we have right now, but it was one supercontinent which have drifted apart. So let us learn about the origin behind this drifting of the continents. So around 225 to 250 million years ago, this was how our Earth looked like. But gradually it drifted. The continents they moved away from each other, and around 150 million years ago, we got this position of the continents into two main continents as Laurasia and Gondwana. Gradually, they drifted apart and they drifted to this location. And finally, the present Earth where we all live. Now, you must be wondering who explained this theory? How that person had got an idea that the continents were one supercontinent around 250 million years ago, and how it had come to this present location. Let us learn about this great person. So, the theory of continental drift was given by the German geoscientist Alfred Wegener in the year 1912. So he had done a lot of research, lot of studies, so through which he concluded that our Earth was a supercontinent, Pangaea, around 250 million years ago. His theory is based on certain evidences because he has found the coal deposits in various continents having same features. He has found the climatic conditions giving the clue that they all were together at one point of time in the year. Even the rainforest in different parts of the country, the coal deposit in different parts of the world, in different parts of the continents, gave him an idea that this separate continents, seven continents, were one at one point of time in the history around 250 million years ago. And one more clear evidence which we can find out, if we fit all these continents into each other like a jigsaw puzzle, we can get a supercontinent Pangaea. So which is again a very clear evidence of one supercontinent Pangaea around 250 million years ago. So at different times, the geologists, the geoscientists have given different names to the different time periods of the earth, of the continents and their different locations. Now, as we have changes in our human body, first a person is an infant, then becoming a child, turning into an adult, and finally attaining old age. As we also grow, we also develop over a period of time. Similarly, our earth has grown, our earth has changed with the period of time. In human body, we have certain biological processes. We have certain hormonal changes which bring change in our body. You might have noticed what you were when you started or when you joined the school and now how you look like. So this gradual change which we can observe in our human body, similarly certain processes are involved in the change in the location and position of the various continents. So let us learn the theory behind the continental drift. So when we say Earth, a one whole mass which have distinct layers, concentric layers, which we have learnt in class 7 itself in chapter 2. So we have learnt that there is the outermost layer known as crust, below it is the mantle, and the innermost is the core. And I hope you remember the temperature which is there at the core. It's around 3000 to 5000 degrees Celsius. So this intense heat, where does that heat goes? That heat is transferred to the mantle. So the source of heat is core, and the heat of core is transferred to the mantle. And I'm sure you all remember the mantle consists of the magma, the semi-solid liquid. That semi-solid liquid gets heat up regularly, continuously because of the heat coming from the core. And that heat is transferred to the mantle, which leads to the convection current, which leads to the movement of the magma inside the Earth's crust, or I could say below the Earth's crust. So as the magma heats up, it rises. As it cools down, it comes down. It heats up, it rises. It cools down, it comes down. So this circular motion of the magma below the Earth crust is responsible for the drifting of the continents. So why it happens? What happens when the magma moves? When the magma moves, it shifts the plates. Now, what are these plates? We'll talk about them in the coming slide. So it moves the plates into different directions, although the speed is very, very slow, just few millimeters in a year, but they move in different direction. Just have a look at this picture. In this picture, we can see certain arrows. These arrows are pointing the direction towards which these plates are moving. So this is known as the theory of plate tectonics. So I repeat, the earth is made up of concentric layers. So the crust is the outermost layer where we live. The mantle is the middle layer, and the innermost is the core, which is the source of heat to the magma. Because of the heat from the core, the magma moves in a circular motion, which moves the plate above it. And because of that plate, the continents which are lying on those plates, they also drift apart. So I hope the theory of plate tectonics is clear to everyone. Now, let's learn about the tectonic plates. So what are tectonic plates? Tectonic plates are the cracked or the pieces of the Earth's crust. So the cracks or the pieces are known as tectonic plates or the lithospheric plates. So as we can very well see from the picture given here, we can see the cracks in the Earth's crust. So each crack denotes one lithospheric plate or tectonic plate. So there are in total 20 tectonic plates. So I hope the theory of plate tectonics is clear and what are tectonic plates is clear. And now this is also clear because continents and oceans, they rest, they lie on these tectonic plates. So with the movement of these plates, the continents also move. So this is the theory which is behind the changing of the position of the Earth from Pangaea to the present day continent. Now, let's learn about the plate movement. So there are three types of plate movements: convergent, divergent, and transform. So convergent, as the name implies, two layers coming towards each other. So the land between it rises up, it gets compressed. Because of that compression, it leads to the formation of certain mountains like the fold mountain. In class 6, we have learnt about the fold mountains. So I repeat, the convergent plate movement, how it happens? It occurs when two tectonic plates move towards each other and they collide due to the force of compression. And when these plates collide, the rock layers of the earth get folded, thus leading to the formation of fold mountains. The fold mountains, there are many fold mountains on the earth. So one very well-known example is the Himalayas, which is in Asia, and the Urals, which is in Europe. Now moving to the second plate movement, that is a divergent plate movement. Divergent, as the name implies, diverging means going away. So when two tectonic plates move away from each other, so due to force of tension and due to this tension, the vertical faults or cracks get created along the lines of the weakness of the crust, thus leading to the formation of block mountains. The raised portion is called block mountain and the downward portion is known as the Rift Valley. So the Vindhyas in Deccan India and the Narmada Valley is the example of block mountain and Rift Valley respectively. The third and the last movement of the plate tectonics is the transform plate movement. So how or what is the logic behind it? Let us find out. So if two tectonic plates, they horizontally slide past against each other. For example, this is one plate, this is another plate, and they both strike against each other, they slide against each other. And because of this sliding passing each other, when they slide against each other, it causes tremendous friction. And that results in volcanic eruption and earthquakes. So this is all about the plate movement, convergent plate movement, divergent plate movement, and transform plate movement. And one more thing I would like to add here, that the divergent plate movement happens, it even leads to formation of certain new crust. Because when the two plates move away from each other, it also leads to when the magma gets exposed to the air, it cools down and leads to the formation of new crust. So this is about the plate movement and the theory behind plate tectonics. Now let us learn about the forces that are happening. Now we have understood that tectonic plates are moving, which is also known as the endogenic forces or sometimes endogenous. And in layman language, we call it as internal forces or internal processes. So as we can see in the picture, we can see two plates, oceanic plate and continental plate. Sometimes the plates are moving towards each other, or if a plate during compression means convergent movement, one plate goes below the other layer, which leads to the melting of that previous crust, which is going down, which is subsided. It melts down, thus forming new magma. And when any fault appears or due to a lot of pressure, that magma comes out in the form of a volcanic eruption. So let us learn about the endogenic forces and the various results of these endogenous forces. So as the name implies, it is beneath the surface of the earth because of the intense heat generated inside the earth's core. Then it causes natural devastation because these activities, volcanic eruption, earthquake, they cause destruction and devastation on the earth's surface. Along with this, endogenic forces also leads to certain new formations or change in the earth's surface. As we have learned in the plate movement, the formation of the block mountains, the formation of the fold mountains, all these are the outcomes of the endogenous forces. Next, so finally, let us understand the endogenous forces leads to the or causes earthquake, tsunami, volcanic eruption, and even changes in the Earth's landscape. So I hope endogenous forces, what are they, how they act, and what are its outcome is clear to everyone. Now let us study about these outcomes one by one. So let's start with the earthquake. What is this loud explosion all about? Yes, you got it right. It's an earthquake. See the devastation caused due to the earthquake. The whole road has been broken down into pieces. So this is what happened when an earthquake strikes the earth's crust. So when the earthquake happens because of the colliding, striking of the two tectonic plates against each other. So which cause lot of tremors, sudden tremors and lot of vibrations. So these vibrations leads to the dislocation or damaging the life and property on the Earth's surface. And we have learned these take place because of the endogenic forces or the endogenous forces. And why they happen? Because of the plate movement. Though the plates move very, very slow, just few millimeters, which hardly can be noticed by us when we are living on the Earth's surface. But that movement can cause devastation, as we can very well see from this picture. Now, let us move to the key terms that are related to understand the topic earthquake. So the first key term is the focus or the hypocenter. So when I say focus or hypocenter, it refers to that point where the earthquake has originated. So the point of origin of the earthquake is known as the hypocenter or the focus. Next is the epicenter. So the epicenter is that point or the point of concentration of an earthquake where the surface has been stuck by that earthquake, where the surface is affected, it gets devastation because near a place to the epicenter, the more is the amount of destruction. In the far a place, the less would be the amount of destruction. So please remember, the vibrations of earthquake, they begin from the focus and travel upward in concentric circles towards the surface of the earth. So as we can see from the picture, the earthquake has originated at the focus and it is moving up to the surface in the concentric circles. So I hope you understood the concentric circles. So these are the circles having a common center point. So they have the common center is the focus. From here, these waves, these seismic waves are moving upwards. So these seismic waves are the vibrations which are caused. And the point on the surface of the earth, which is vertically above the focus, the point vertically above the focus on the surface is known as the epicenter. So, as I told you a few minutes back, the intensity of an earthquake is maximum near epicenter. So, means near a place to epicenter, more is the amount of damage caused. Third term given here is the seismic waves. So, these concentric waves, these concentric circles are the seismic waves. Moving to the few more terms related to the chapter, the first is the seismometer or the seismograph. So it is an instrument which is used to record the Earth's movement. So we can see from this picture, we can see a small needle which is pointing, which is putting some zigzag lines. It's drawing those zigzag lines on the paper. So it is recording the Earth's movement. The next key term is the Richter scale. It's a scale used to measure the strength and the magnitude of the earthquake. The Richter scale also defines the amount of destruction an earthquake will cause. The higher the Richter scale, the more is the damage. One more important thing which we need to understand here, 1 point increase in the Richter scale. I repeat, just 1 point increase in the Richter scale increases the amount of shaking by 10 times. I repeat, 1 point of increase, the shaking is 10 times increased. So you can very well understand the amount of destruction by every 1 point increase on the Richter scale. So, and we can very well see from this picture as well, below 3, it is not even felt. And as we move higher, the intensity increases, the amount of damage increases. So till 4 to 5, it is minor. Beyond 5, it's small. Till 4 to 5, it's small. Then 5 to 6, it's moderate. And then as we move further, 6 to 7, strong earthquake. 7 to 8, it becomes major. Means causing lot of damage and destruction. And finally, 8 to 9 is great. Means the most disastrous. So this was about Richter scale. Moving to the next term, seismology, it's a science that deals with the study of earthquakes. And the last, seismologists, they are the scientists who study the earthquake. So I hope the terms are clear and why are they relevant to understand the chapter, understand the topic earthquake. Now let's move to the next topic, the earthquake waves. Earthquake waves, as we have learned in the two previous slides, seismic waves. So these are the waves which are noticed, which help us to analyze the intensity and the magnitude of an earthquake. So there are three waves: primary waves, secondary waves, and surface waves. Primary waves, as the name implies, they are the most initial one. Secondary, they are followed by the primary waves, means the primary waves are immediately followed by the secondary wave, and secondary wave is followed by the surface wave. Or we can say primary waves are the foremost waves, whereas surface waves are the last waves to reach the surface or to be felt. So they are the fast and foremost. They are also known as P waves or push waves. Secondary, as already told to you, they arrive after primary wave. One thing we need to remember about secondary wave, they do not pass through liquids. And they are also known by S waves and shock waves. The third and last, surface waves, they are last to arrive. They travel over the Earth's surface. Now, you can understand if they travel on the Earth's surface, it means they cause the maximum damage on the Earth. They cause damage to life and property around the epicenter because the intensity of the earthquake is maximum near the epicenter. Now, moving to the next topic, the topic distribution of earthquake. Earthquake is divided, or what we can say, the earthquake prone regions are divided into three belts. The most intense is the circum-Pacific belt. Around 65% of the earthquakes, they take place in circum-Pacific belt. So we can see from the picture, from the global distribution map of the world of the earthquake, which shows the circum-Pacific belt, or in other words, we also call it ring of fire. So this is the area which is most earthquake prone region. You might have heard about Japan. It's a country which is hit by earthquake, means daily it experiences earthquake. They may be of less magnitude or higher magnitude, but every day it is hit by an earthquake. Why? Because it is on the ring of fire. You can very well see from the map. Next is the mid-continental belt. It is that belt which is or which passes through the continents. So we can see parts of Europe, Asia, and Africa. They are covered under the mid-continental belt. Then certain, in other words, what we can say, the most moderate or less intensity earthquake are felt on the mid-Atlantic ridge belt. So which is this area between the Atlantic Ocean. So this was about the distribution of the earthquake globally. Moving to the tsunami, the giant wave. So this wave is again caused due to earthquake, but one more term condition apply here when the earthquake take place under seabed or the ocean floor. So that earthquake, that vibration, that tremor causes a giant, huge waves. We can very well see from the picture, these waves are even higher than the multi-story buildings. So we can very well imagine the amount of devastation that such waves would cause on the seashore. One such earthquake and the tsunami had hit the Indian Ocean in year 2004. So the epicenter of that earthquake was the west coast of northern Sumatra in Indonesia. And the magnitude of this earthquake in 2004 on the Indian Ocean was 9.1 to 9.3. So as I told you in the previous slides, the Richter scale, the higher the scale, the higher 10 times is the amount of shaking or vibrations. So we can understand this undersea earthquake had devastated lot of areas. One more thing I would like to add here, the during this earthquake, during this tsunami, many islands of Indian Oceans were drowned. They got submerged in Indian Ocean. So I hope I'm clear till here. Just one more additional fact which I would like to share with you all here is, in India, the earthquake prone region is Northern Plains and the Himalayan region. Few months back, even in Delhi also we experienced the earthquake. Even I was sitting on the chair and I could feel the tremors. I could feel that my chair was shaking. So this is what happens when the earthquake happens. Now moving to the next outcome of the endogenous forces, that is the volcano. So volcano is an opening or the rupture in the planet's surface which allow hot molten rock, ash, gases to escape from below the surface. And as we have talked earlier also, that why do earthquake happen? They happen because of the movement of the tectonic plates. Again, I would refer here, the plates move very, very slow, just few millimeters in a year, but that though negligible movement can cause volcanoes and earthquake eruptions. And one more point to remember here, volcanoes are most commonly found along the plate boundaries. So where the two plates, they collide against each other, they diverge, that area is the area which experiences maximum number of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Moving to the components of a volcano. See, we have learned what is a volcano. So now we need to understand the different components of a volcano. So first is the magma chamber. So when I say magma chamber, it's the storehouse of the magma. Second is the vent. Vent is that small, is a pipe or the opening through which the magma is coming out and reaching the surface of the earth. Third is the side vent or the secondary vent. So it's a crack that had appeared in the earth's crust through which the magma is coming out. Fourth, crater. Crater is that hole or a cup-like or a funnel-like structure that is formed on the mouth of the volcano. Next is the lava. Here we need to understand the lava is that molten material only, but when it reaches the surface of the earth, it is known as lava. Else it is called magma. So when it is inside, it is known as magma. But when it comes out, it is called lava. And then along with the volcano, in the volcanic eruption, along with the magma, ash clouds, they are formed. The lava bombs, they come out. Some pieces of rocks, they come out with a lot of explosion. So this is all about the components of volcano. Now, coming to the types of volcanoes, there are three types of volcanoes: active, dormant, and extinct. Active, as the name implies, they erupt frequently. They are very active in eruption. So Mount Etna in Italy is the example of an active volcano. Whereas the volcanoes which have not erupted for a very long time, sometimes also known as sleeping volcanoes, they are the dormant volcanoes. So one of the example of dormant volcano is Fujiyama in Japan. Third and last, the extinct volcano. So the volcanoes which have no record of eruption and no likelihood of eruption, means when they will erupt, they have not erupted from a very long time and there is no sign of any type of eruption in the future. Sometimes people call them as dead volcanoes. But the geologists warn us that we should never underestimate any type of volcano because we never know when an extinct volcano may become dormant or a dormant may become active or vice versa. So one example of extinct volcano is Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Now, coming to the distribution of volcanoes. When we talk about distribution of volcanoes, again, it is divided into two main belts. One is the circum-Pacific belt, the other is the mid-world mountain belt. Mid-world mountain belt consists of the dormant or extinct volcanoes, whereas the circum-Pacific belt contains the volcanoes which are active. So Ring of Fire contains the active volcanoes, whereas the Mid-World Mountain Belt contains the extinct or the dormant volcanoes. That was all about the volcanoes. To the last topic of the chapter, that is a mountain range and trenches. So when the tectonic plates they move against each other, they may lead to the formation of various landforms. They may even cause the change on the Earth's surface. So when the two plates they collide against each other, they lead to change on the Earth's surface. They create mountain systems. Like as I talked to you previously, the mountain systems like the fold mountains, the Himalayas, the Aravallis, the Urals, and even the fold mountain, the block mountain, sorry. And it even causes huge trenches on the ocean floor. This is all what happens when the tectonic plates they move below the Earth's surface. Sometimes they move towards each other, sometimes they move away from each other, sometimes they slide past against each other. I would end my session with the last question. Are volcanoes helpful in any way? Do search it and write down in the comment box. I would wait for your answers. Thank you so much for watching. Do like, share and subscribe my channel Social Science with Shilpa. And don't forget to leave your valuable suggestions and comments in the description box. Thank you so much. God bless you all.